Have you ever been serging along and you realize that it looks like your threads are hanging off the edge? Well, one thing to note, this is not a tension issue. We're going to talk about what cutting width actually is. And we have two knobs that we actually look at. So there is the cutting width knob, and then there is what Bernina has as a patent feature is the micro thread control, or MTC, as it's actually labeled in your manual. So what does that mean? So first off, it means that if you would like to have a wider stitch, that you can adjust the knife to actually leave more fabric in the overlock area. Or if you'd like a narrower stitch, you can adjust the knife to cut off more fabric. The only thing is, when you have it cut off more fabric, that's where you have the loops that start to come apart or come and show up. Now, there's nothing wrong with this stitch, it just kind of looks a little sloppy, and most people like to have that filled in like we've done down in this area just a little bit. Actually, on this one, see how we had loops and then we have no loops. So let me show you first what and how to change the cutting width. So I'm going to open this up, because when you go to move the knife away from the needles, it is being pressed or pushed up against the lower knife down here. So sometimes what I'll do is actually release the pressure, and that makes this really easy to turn. See how you can see the knife moving out of the way and getting further away from the needles. Then to move the knife from the outside number, or the biggest number, and come all the way in, it's a lot easier. So we can just let it turn, and that pressure almost kind of helps it come all the way in. Now, why do we have to change this? It's because your fabric is different thicknesses. So sometimes the fabric will help kind of fluff up and fill in, but if you're working with a lighter weight fabric like I was here, this was just even a single layer, there's not as much fabric thickness to fill in all the way to the edge. The other thing that we run into, instead of loops hanging off the edge, is that there's too much fabric trying to get jammed into that little space. So if you have a thin fabric and your knife is all the way away from your needles, it'll actually start to tunnel or ripple inside here and not make it lay nice and flat. So if this is the case, and you can see how it just is kind of creating this little tunnel on the back side, you just have way too much fabric trying to get into that itty bitty space. So just take your knife adjustment, move that knife physically towards a more middle setting, and then try it again. You want it to, when you put your fingers along the edge, you want it to lay flat. So let's just start from here, and I kind of don't know where I am on my turns. So let's just go ahead and stitch and see. I think my knife is all the way in. And of course, I'm looking for a nice filled in, well, there it is, nice and even along that edge. And look, it's not as wide as it was over here on the, when I had it set really, really far out to the side. But let me show you, if we have any problems where those, where the loops were hanging off the edge, that is where the micro thread control can come in. Now this part might be a little hard to see, but as you twist this lever kind of to one side or the other, there's a little finger in here that's actually moving away or in right down at the needle. So you'll have to almost do it at your serger because it's such a fine movement, but it can change how much or where the thread is actually positioned and bring it either closer to the cut edge or further apart, depending on, your fabric. So every fabric is different. So there's not really a little chart you can make so much. You really have to run it through, see what it looks like, see how wide you want your finished seam to be, and then make it so the edge of the stitching touches the edge of your fabric.